right, welcome everyone to my second episode of my YouTube series, which I am now calling Blake's Astrology Corner, which I'm really excited about. And of course, I'm back on here with Kristina Martin, who is also an astrologer. And, we were just texting earlier today and there was some news coming out and we're like, do we want to talk about this? And that one thing led to the other, and now we're recording an episode on it. Welcome, Kristina.
Thank you. Yeah, I'm so excited to be here, talk astrology again. This is going to be fun. I feel like we've done a good job of, we've got a lot of charts on the horizon and a lot of information to kind of sift through and see, what we might take from this information. So I'm so excited. I am Kristina. I'm at KLM Astrology on klmastrology.com or on Instagram. So that's where you can find me. And yeah, I'm happy to be here.
Awesome. Thank you. And before we get into it, I actually just recently left my job. And I am, pursuing astrology a little bit more thoroughly and optimistically. And I think this is part of that series. And just to give a background, I actually studied political science in college. So I have a degree in journalism and a minor in poli-sci. So I think this overlap of political expertise, and I've been very involved in the political space for a long time. And I think these two niches are kind of coming together in a way that's a little unexpected for me.
Yes, but also so good. This is fantastic. Yeah. I mean, everything in politics has sort of a starting date that we kind of know. It's government. So it's got to be marked down. It's got to have a birth time. So it works out well.
It does. And I think it's also just so interesting to look at history from a historical and astrological lens to bring context to situations. It's just so interesting to be okay, here's the history of events. And then here's the astro events of it all. I've decided to call it Blake's Astrology Corner. So we'll see how this goes.
Yeah, I'm ready. I'm going to pull up my little book and listen to you talk. That's great. Yeah.
And of course, you guys can find me on Instagram at cosmic.empowerment. And you can find me at my website to book a reading at whatisblakedoing.com. But without further ado of all of the intros, today, President Joe Biden announced he was seeking re-election, which is interesting because when he initially announced he was running, he floated the idea that he would potentially run for one term as a way to I'm the only person that can beat Trump. And then, Trump's running for re-election. So I guess that gives him leeway to think that he's the man for the job. But yeah, Biden announced.
Right. Yeah. So that is so interesting. We're just right away, in a Mercury retrograde, announcing the information that once was is now, being reviewed again. This is a little different. I didn't quite mean that. I mean, yeah, very interesting.
Definitely. So I figure, let's see here, I can share my screen and we can get right into the Biden announcement.
Great.
Give me 1 second. Alrighty, right. Can you see that?
I can, yes.
Awesome. So, as far as I understand, he announced at 6 a.m. Washington, D.C. time, which puts Jupiter in Aries right on the ascendant. We got an Aries rising chart ruled by Mars and Cancer on the IC. Wow. Any immediate reactions to that?
Right. Well, I mean, definitely makes sense. It's it's Jupiter and Aries energy. It is it's out there. It's not is he maybe, is he not? I feel like the last couple of days it's been maybe thought of, but formally making the announcement, pushing it out there, self-assertion, just all the way.
Mm. Yeah, I think Jupiter and Aries is like go for it. It's just
Yeah.
like it's just brazen. It's like here I'm doing it, and like I have
Mhm.
the, I think some of the words that he used too is like I have the energy or I have the power or like there was some like word language that he used which was very like I've got the energy, if you will.
Right, right. And I think we were like, yeah, mentioning briefly before we got on, like the part, like his, I think he had some sort of a video, and the very first part of the video was like of January 6th and all of the fighting that was happening like on the Capitol steps, and also just so like aligned with that. He's like, that's the first part. He's going with that like combat mode type of energy right
Do you
off the
think
gate.
that do you think that that's the chart ruler Mars in Cancer of like look what they did to our home?
Oh my gosh, yes, yes, that makes it really
Like Mars and
scary.
Cancer in the fourth of like look at these people and look at what they did, like look at what they did to like our country, and
Oh my
like
god.
I'm embodying the Jupiter Aries of like that's not going to stand.
Yes, yes, right. Like the Jupiter and Aries, like the moral high ground of, why I need to fight. Like I have this, elevated sort of reason for it, like this, Jupiter belief system, putting it out there. Oh my gosh, yeah, so great. The Mars and Cancer are so good, fighting on behalf of the family of the United States. Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, and like on the IC, I mean, just like Mars and Cancer on the IC, just to me is like I'm gonna be our protector. Like
Yes.
I'm going to be the one that protects us, that makes it so that you don't need to worry about the
Mm.
rest of it. You know what I mean? And I feel that that's very much like a mentality that a lot of US people like. It's like I feel sometimes my perception at least is sometimes the public like really likes a president where they don't have to pay attention.
Mm-hmm.
They can just be like,
Mm-hmm.
oh, he's got it. Right?
Yes.
Or like the
Yes.
fact that Joe Biden has largely been pretty like, I don't know, I don't want to call him silent, but like I think throughout his first term he's been, kind of like mum drum, like I'm just gonna go through my daily life and we're gonna get this done, but I'm not gonna make a big deal about it.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Right. Like basically like the opposite of Trump. Like very few sort of headlines with Biden, very few even speeches. Like I think the amount of speeches he's done compared to Trump is like minuscule. So there is something about him that, yeah, like humming in the background. I mean, I know he's also like a 12th house sun, which I always
Mhm.
think about that, because that's kind of like the ego sort of is, like taking not necessarily a backseat, but is a little watered down. It's not just like so upfront. He's like trying to blend sort of in with everybody and get into our kind of subconsciousness in that way.
Yeah, and in Scorpio too, like his sun is in Scorpio
Mm.
too, which is very like, you know, you don't need to know what I do until I do it.
Right.
That's how I think of sometimes of Scorpio sun
Oh yeah.
energy
Oh yeah.
is like I'm gonna do something, but you're gonna know it when it happens.
Right. I'm going to control every aspect of this, and even you knowing about it is going to be controlled. Yes.
Yeah, absolutely. And
100%.
it's coming right on the day we got to talk about the sun, the sun north node conjunction. Like
Yes.
in Taurus, just like very like it's still about this like yearning or this wantingness of stability. And I think,
Right.
like I think there's some the North Node is maybe drawing us into wanting or him trying to maybe project some sort of security in the
Mhm.
sense of like how I think the last, basically since the Trump era that there has been a destabilization.
Right, 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 right. Like we think about like the South Node ending its sort of journey in Scorpio, and like the sort of pain and suffering we've felt by maybe being victimized, or the like imbalance of use of power, and so wanting to, yeah, like shine a light, or that sun just like warming up and bringing vitality to the thought that like things can still be calm. We can do the Taurus, like you're going to be okay, you're going to have security. I think he even mentioned, I think he said something like Social Security in his speech. He mentioned like, you know, people in the Senate and Congress want to potentially take that away. They're talking about it, and I'm not going to do that. Like, I'm keeping your security, very much so.
Yeah, I think that also maybe comes back to I don't know. It's like the play on of this uh, Taurus Cancer vibes that we got going here.
Mm-hmm.
Of like the moon is at 7 degrees Cancer, and it's making it's making a sextile to the sun in the North Node, and it's making a trine to Saturn. And the moon, I think in event astrology, again, I'm not as prolific in that study, but from what I understand about event astrology, is the moon is the public, or it's the larger, it's the larger perspective, and the moon there, pretty close to the IC and making a connection with the sun, the North Node, and Saturn is sort of like, I have security in mind at hand, and I'm thinking about you, and I'm also thinking about our structures and how that plays in.
So good. Right. I love that. Like, I'm thinking about you. I care about you. Like the moon, I intuitively understand you. Yeah. Yeah. That's amazing. Right. And like willing to do the work, like Saturn bit, like, I'm going to stick around. I'm going to, do the heavy lifting so that you don't have to deal with a Trump again. Yeah.
Yeah. And, Saturn in the 11th too, in Pisces is very, because I like to think of, I like to think of the 11th house as like people that have common, like communities of common beliefs, or like community, or like larger organizations of shared understanding of vision. And I think that Saturn in the 11th in Pisces is like, I'm gonna be your optimistic structure.
Yes, your healing structure. Yes. Uh-huh. Oh yeah, that's good. That's great. That's great. Yeah, and like maybe the large mountain we see in front of us that we sort of have to climb in order to like start taking care of ourselves again, like, and build the communities back up again.
Yeah, the only other thing I'm really noticing is, I just looked in Mercury. He did announce during Mercury retrograde, which I don't know. As an astrologer, I've been really playing around with what does Mercury retrograde really mean, because I think we talk about it a lot of like, oh, it means we're going to have to review, or it means we're going to have to do this. And I went to a talk at ISAR. I don't know if you were there. It was Maurice Fernandez's on Mars retrograde.
Yes.
And the way that he phrased it is like, retrogrades are not necessarily a time to not do things. They're more of a time to think about doing things in a different way.
Brilliant.
And I mean, if I'm paraphrasing that wrong, I guess someone will correct me, but that was my takeaway. My preface of me saying that during the Mercury retrograde. But I think maybe, it's like, I don't know, did his announcement come as a surprise? Probably not. But like, did he do it in a really like, maybe showing those videos, as you said at the very beginning, of like the people storming the Capitol, and like doing things in a very like practical way? Like, like the imagery is like, I'm doing this because this is still an issue.
Yeah. I couldn't agree more. Yeah, there is something more like with the retrograde. I remember that talk too, and it was like you're just bringing a more a different type of consciousness to whatever situation it is, and so like trying to really bring up what the Trump presidency was like, and like frame it. I mean, it's been framed. It's been being framed, like we've been trying to frame it with all these lawsuits and everything that's going on with Trump and the people involved, but from this guy trying to sort of show us another way, like that. Yeah, Mercury retrograde, different way of looking at it. Yeah,
and it's making a sextile to Mars and Cancer there, right? And so I think it's just more communication of like, look what they did to our country, like look what they did to our capital, and like how they they tried to, they tried to, whatever word you would choose about what that means. I mean, insurrection, sedation, I don't know. I don't want to, I'm not going to use any certain legal terms because anyway, but everyone understands.
Right. Trying to stop the election. Yeah.
Is there anything else that you're noticing that you want to talk about in this chart?
Maybe the sextile between Venus and Chiron. That's kind of nice too. Mm-hmm. Venus in Gemini and then Chiron in Aries. So, our Venus in Gemini is, he definitely did talk about, also, I think he mentioned in his speech, like he talked about women's rights, like women should be able to do what they want with their bodies. And he also said, like, anybody should be allowed to love whoever they want to love, be whoever they want to be. So that might be like Gemini speaking, or Venus and Gemini, like the variety of love that you can have, and like being able to talk about women and women's issues. Maybe that's part of that. And then connected to Chiron in Aries, like the wound that we might have as individuals who can't do everything that they want to do in this country because of the different belief systems.
Yeah, of feeling like a Chiron and Aries, feeling like a lack of autonomy based on constriction of things that are outside of ourselves, and then that Venus being like, how can we relate to one another in a way that allows us for that?
Right. Even in like just like a relating to each other in like a thoughtful way, or like a more intellectual way, or just being able to speak about it. There's something there with that too, with that Gemini part.
And the fact that Mercury and Venus have a mutual reception, of Venus being Venus ruling Mercury and Mercury ruling Venus, if you will, and even that kind of creates a more, I think, a groundedness in what typically would be maybe a more airy, wavy Gemini Venus.
Yeah. A flirty Venus, shall we say? Yes. Yeah.
Yes, a little bit more sensualness, or really a more beautification of how you articulate something.
Right. Oh my gosh. Right. Beautiful. Yeah. You're doing it now. Yeah.
Thanks. Yeah, I mean, I have Mercury in Taurus natally, so,
yes.
I think about, thoughtfulness and words and approach and stuff. And the only other thing that I think we haven't talked about is Pluto is in the 10th house. And I think that might just highlight again, like public reputation around power dynamics and what that really, in Aquarius now, about like what that really means for the collective.
Maybe trying to capitalize on the power of the collective, like our collective belief systems, or what our ideas around the future of the United States is, and who's gonna
well, and taking that advantage especially if Biden mentioned his speech around bodily autonomy and also a person's right to love who they want, and that to be recognized. I think that can really speak to the collective power that I think people are wishing, that people are wishing to see.
Right. He's like, maybe he is bringing that sort of like subversive or shadow bit sort of to the surface. He's like trying to elevate it out into the public. Yeah.
The only other thing is like it is interesting because we have the Scorpio South Node in the 7th, and the North Node in the 1st, and I feel like Scorpio in South Node in the 7th is like what sort of like happenings of the past need to be processed and let go of, so that we can fully stand in our own, some sort of stand in our own true sense of self, or sense of who we are. And from from a chart perspective of like an announcement, I wonder if that's more about I don't know, like trying to maybe that is even tied to, again, how he showed the insurrection video of like, that's not going to happen again, of like, we're letting go of that.
Oh, yes. Yeah, like the healing power of, like the upfront healing power of Taurus and what Taurus can do for Scorpio. Yeah, like, right, we sort of do need to like let it go, or understand that that is a potential partner that we've, or the potential other of the United States, and speaking on behalf of, just individuals, maybe. Yeah, very interesting. I was thinking too, like Scorpio, South Node, seventh house, like seventh house can sometimes be open enemies. And Scorpio, like as a South Node is sometimes like how we're wounded in the past by maybe, open enemies, or by people that we partnered with somehow, some way, or thought that we were committed to the same thing and not working out that way.
Yeah. Yeah, that's great context. I mean, the other thing I'll just say, and then we can move on to Joe Biden's chart, is what I've really been thinking about in relativeness to the collective understanding of the South Node being in Scorpio is just really having, like, us being forced to face the issues that we have kind of like blocked out, or like the things that like collectively we're like, no, we're not going to talk about that. Like, we're just moving forward.
Yes. You cannot do that. Yes, correct.
And I think the Scorpio South Node is like, you can ignore it, but it's gonna come out in ways that you don't like.
Right. Exactly. Yeah, you need to do more like a reality check. Like, it's Taurus. It's like the physical, like manifestation of all of this that's been going on. Like, what is this really? How is this really showing up? Absolutely.
Do you have anything else to say before we move on to Joe Biden's natal chart?
I think that's it. I'm like pretty happy. This announcement actually looks pretty good. I don't think that I saw many there's really no major squares. Like, it's a nice chart.
Yeah, because I was looking at it, I was kind of like, wait, with these squares, and the only square right now is, Pluto is technically squaring the nodes, and I do wonder how much that is playing a role right now in our like collective trying to like unearthing of like what I don't know, like what our power is, and how we use power in either a personal way, a psychological way, or like a community way.
Right. Like, really kind of like, I mean, yeah, it's Pluto in Aquarius. So the power to the people, the power to like the group of people versus, our individual needs. Definitely.
Yeah, absolutely. Awesome. Well, let's move on to Joe Biden's chart. Can you see that?
Yeah.
Great. So we have Joe Biden is a Scorpio sun. He is a Taurus moon, 0 degrees, which is a very important thing we'll come back to. And we have a Sag rising at 3 degrees. And the immediate thing that I think is really interesting is that he is Jupiter ruled, because he's a Sag rising. And that means that he has Jupiter in Cancer, and that makes his chart ruler. And I don't know if he's working with an astrologer or not, but making an announcement with Jupiter on the ascendant in a chart is like, like, it feels eerie to me. that the announcement would be made when Jupiter is literally on the ascendant in the announcement chart, and Jupiter is the most important planet for him to pay attention to in his own and other things that happen with him.
Oh my God.
And so it is interesting to me that that's how it shows up.
Yeah, I mean, I'm pretty sure, the ascendant moves like once every 4 minutes. So a 4-minute window in the 24-hour day, that's the one he picked for.
And also, it's important to know too that the Pisces, Aries, and I think Taurus move faster from the ascendant in the northern hemisphere. So if you're in the northern hemisphere, it actually is faster than 4 minutes.
Oh my God. Oh my God.
Because if you look, I've looked at this, and if you look at the data, people that are, you're more likely to have a rising sign. Well, it's not you're more likely. It's just that there's less time that the ascendant is spent in Pisces and Aries, and I think Taurus in the northern hemisphere, and then it's vice versa in the southern hemisphere. So, so I just think that even makes it even more like, okay, like this had to have been planned.
Yes. Too good to be true. Yes. How? Right. Right. It is like it's big, expansive energy. It is like, I am looking at the big picture here. I see, the horizons, and I want to speak to that. I'm aligned with it.
So instantly, the other thing that I was gonna just draw out is we had that that partial or hybrid solar eclipse that happened last week, and it happened at 29 degrees Aries, which is within a degree right here of his 0 degree Taurus moon. And I think that a solar eclipse on your moon is sort of like, to me, like new beginnings of like, again, like Taurus about like security, like I've got this, I can do what I want sort of vibes.
Yes, Taurus. Of course, that. And then like, I wonder too if it's like, he has had an insanely long career in government. He like his past, the moon, has been in government. Like I think I read like 36 years and then 8 years as vice president. So his like moon partially does represent all of the past, all of the sort of like habits and reactions and sort of subconscious patterns that he's, built together through working through the government. And so maybe that eclipse there is like, yes, remember your past. You've got the goods. Like you have done this all. You're here now. Like, why not secure it further? Why not do one more push at Aries energy? Yeah.
I also think it's sort of like, I'm just thinking about Joe Biden and just his general nature, and the things that like when he was vice president that people kind of like lost their, that like loved all of his stuff, is like when he would like get ice cream and he would just have that smirk on his face. Truly I am enjoying life's pleasures, because he's like sitting on the corner smiling so wide having ice cream. And to me, that could not be more of a Taurus moon thing. Like and in the 5th house, which I think is really about pleasure and like what brings us what brings us pleasure in any sense of the term. And I think that, and also like Joe would have videos of him like running through the White House with the pride flag. Like, I just feel like he has this kind of very youthful demeanor to him, regardless of the fact that if he's reelected, he'll be the oldest president to ever be elected to office. And I think that he thinks in his mind that he's still like 21. My perception of him based on how he responds to things sometimes is just like, I truly sometimes think that he still thinks he's 21.
Yeah, no, I totally agree, which is so interesting. I mean, maybe that has to do too with like a little bit of all that 12th house like energy, the 12th house stellium. Like there's something there where like, I don't know, I feel like time for the 11th house and 12th house is like different somehow. Like these people can really sort of change, like we said, like consciousnesses, or be in different places in different times, embody those spots. And like there is like the 12th house and that Pisces Neptune energy can bring such like I don't want to say naivety, but like a hopefulness that just feels really youthful too. Yeah.
Yeah, that's a really good insight. I mean, he's got 4 planets in the 12th house. He's got Mars, he's got Mercury, he's got the Sun, and he's got Venus, all in Scorpio. And that's just, it's a lot of Scorpio energy. And I think that his life has kind of been, it's not been an easy life for him by any means. And there's been a lot of loss in his life. I think when he was first elected to the Senate, I think he was one of the youngest people to ever be elected to the Senate when he originally was elected. And I think within the week or in a very short time span of when he was elected or when he was taking office, his wife and his kids were in a car crash and they died. Then he kind of, in this kind of prosperity moment of I'm the youngest senator to be elected. He also was dealing with a pretty incredible loss, which, I think that just because you have 12th house placements doesn't mean you're going to experience something like that, but it can mean that there is some association with what it means to have something go away.
Yes. Well, that, and then yes. And I feel like the 12th house is the most expanded version of all of the emotions, the highest of highs and the lowest of lows. So for him to experience that at the same time is really intense. And so, yeah, the 12th house people that I know, they can be so elevated, above, spiritually, just at the top of the mountain. And then other times, just have sort of their life decimated a little bit or end up in hospitals and, this sort of tough spot as well. So,
Absolutely.
I mean, it shows the power, it shows his power of empathy, Scorpio in a water house, this guy can feel things. That's for sure. Yeah.
But it's Scorpio, so you're never going to see it.
You're never going to see it.
He might be super emotional, but he'll cry to Dr. Joe Biden, but you're never going to see it. You're going to see Grandpa Joe and the power of I'm going to be this, I'm going to be the grandpa.
Yeah. Yes. Yeah. Mr. Smooth, Mr. Cool.
And that Sag rising of I'm abundant. What do you mean? I'm here to, just kind of, I'm going to crack a joke, and I also think during the State of the Union, I didn't watch the full thing, but he when he makes speeches, he definitely has a way of kind of cracking a joke or kind of coming for someone in a way that is funny, but still kind of has that banter that that I think Sagittarius energy kind of exemplifies.
I love that. Yes, I love that Sagittarius energy for sure. It's definitely pretty distinct. Yeah, there's it's a little it's a tiny bit combative, but it's sort of smart, and it's not really supposed to be combative, more just, let's have a little fun here. Yeah.
I always think of it. It's always when he's on a podium or he's speaking, he'll always use phrases let's look at the facts, let's say the thing. It's always this I don't know, this this catchphrase or whatever it is. And I think again that feels very Sagittarius Gemini.
Yes too, right? And even the idea of concentrating on the facts or the information, very information informed, or the truth. We really want the Sagittarius so concerned or so focused on the truth. Yeah.
And I've been thinking about this too, because his Cancer Jupiter just plays such a big role in his chart, because it's his chart ruler. It's also in the 8th, and it rules his moon. And I just think that with that Taurus moon in the 5th and then it ruling his Jupiter, it's sort of I know that I can just rely on other people, or I can rely on other people to provide me that sense of security, or that sense of how I can use other people's resources to understand that I could be nurtured. And I just think that maybe might speak a lot to the way that he can corral people to supporting him for president.
Oh my gosh, so great. Yes. Yeah. I mean, if you think about it, before, his presidency, he was sort of known, I think, correct me if I'm wrong, but to be a little bit of the guy reaching across the aisle, trying to make, all of government his family, that like Jupiter and Cancer widened version of, we're all in this together. Kumbaya.
Right.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. And that's, that's kind of gotten him in like a little bit of trouble.
Mm-hmm.
But it's never like, I don't know, when people kind of confront him on it or when he's faced that kind of criticism, I feel like it just kind of doesn't stick with him. He's like, he's just kind of like, I don't care.
Yeah. As a Sagittarius would. Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. Like he's just like, okay, like have a good day.
Yes, exactly.
So that and I was thinking about that a lot too, of having a Jupiter Cancer, because I think that Jupiter Cancers can really do a great job of making people feel like there's a feeling, a sense of like that things are going to be okay and that there's like meaning behind it. And I feel like I feel like his Jupiter Cancer being his chart ruler really comes out in the senses of how he makes how people feel when he talks, because sometimes he has things to say and he'll say like, let's get down to it, but it's not always about what he's saying. It really is about how people feel when he's talking.
Mm-hmm. Oh my gosh, so perceptive. Yeah, completely because he has had like moments of like gaffe, or moments of when he's like not quite said the right thing or repeated himself, or like lost a little bit in a speech. But you're right, like that hasn't been, I mean, at least from my own perspective, it doesn't seem like it's that huge of a deal for everybody.
No, and it's and it's trining his sun, and it's and his Venus, and I mean, to a wide orb his Mercury, but I kind of consider those three all together because they're the Mars is a little separated, but I think that the Mercury, Sun, Venus is all together. And in that trine to Jupiter is just like, like it's kind of like egging, it's kind of like, no, like I got this. And sometimes I think of Jupiter as being a little, how do I want to say this? Like encroaching or overbearing sometimes too, because Jupiter can be quite expansive and like, optimistic, but it can also be like, I'm in charge.
Yeah. Oh, overly so. Yes.
Yeah. Like overly so. And I, I think like having that Jupiter trine those planets can really be like, not only am I in charge, but I'm going to be persistent about being in charge. And I think that kind of shows through, because he's, I think that he's run for president 4 times over like a couple decade span, because I think he ran in 80, or it would have been 90. It was in the 80s, I think. It was in the 80s, and then he ran again in 08, which is then when he became VP, and then obviously he ran in 2020 and is running again. So he's like run like across multiple decades. And that is like such a Scorpio thing. Like who is going to run for president 4 times?
Scorpio thing, even a Taurus moon thing. Like I want it. I'm going to get it. I'm not going to let go. Yeah.
Right. And sort of like, I don't know, like when he ran in 2022, I feel like his justification was just like, it's finally my time because I know I can kind of win, right? And also he didn't run in 16 because the death of his son, and I think that really can maybe also reflect again that Scorpio 12th house of like another loss that he had to face, where he felt like he had to be he had to be in the background, or he had to be removed from when he was taking so much public reputation as being vice president.
Yeah, right. I wonder if there was some sort of like small sort of like lesson for him in the first time when it happened to him. Like him, it's incredible that it's happened multiple times to this guy, but the first time him like getting into office and facing that incredible loss, like the second time it happens, he's like, I've been here. I know that it's too much to handle both of these at the same time. So yeah, gonna wait it out, which again, that talks about that Taurus moon, like fine with waiting and striking at the right moment. Like this is gonna be, gonna take my time with this so that it's happening correctly.
Absolutely. I think that's the Scorpio patience.
Yeah. Yeah. Both of them, I think, the Taurus and Scorpio. Yeah.
Oh yeah, absolutely. But yeah, and the Taurus moon of like, I'm, I know what I want, and I know I know I can be persistent about it.
Right. And I'll get it. Yeah. Yeah. Mm-hmm.
What else are you noticing? Or is there something that you want to talk about with the chart?
Mm-hmm. Yeah. I'm just taking a look here.
I mean, I think it's interesting that he has Uranus on the descendant in Gemini,
Yes.
and
Mm-hmm.
Saturn there as well. It makes
Mm-hmm.
me question what was his relationship to his siblings, but I don't actually know quite a lot about his sibling life or his. I don't know his history enough of his siblings to speak to it.
I don't know too much either. And you're thinking siblings because it's in Gemini?
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
I guess that's just like a natural thing that I think of when I think of Gemini energy is like what sort of context or relationship is there with any siblings or people that feel like siblings.
Mm-hmm. Very interesting. Yeah. Right. Because it would talk about having sort of like a eccentric sibling and a very serious, heavy sibling.
Or like unusual or like maybe his relationship to his relationship to other people is sort of like not what it maybe not what it was prescripted to be in the time that he was born and raised. I mean, I know that they moved to Delaware from Scranton, and I know there was something about his father working in a factory but I don't remember the context enough to like speak to that from an educated perspective. But I'm just wondering how this Uranus Saturn plays into his chart, because I mean, being on the descendant I think is a really big deal.
Right. Like yes, Uranus on the descendant. I'm just trying to think. It's like,
Oh, go ahead.
yeah. No. No. I'm still noodling. You go.
Yeah. Well, it makes me think, and I'm wondering if this is Uranus Saturn or if this is more Mercury, and you can maybe reflect back what you think. But I know that he grew up with a stutter, and he worked very much to overcome that. And I'm wondering if that has something to do with communication and how he talked. And, I think Gemini, again, kind of ruling, communication patterns, and his Uranus in his 7th house is ruled by his Mercury in the 12th house.
Yes. Yeah. I mean, right. Both. I mean, I would think it's probably more that Uranus because his Mercury is well aspected by Jupiter. So it doesn't like have too much going up against it. So yeah, that might be more of the Uranus there. And isn't Jill a teacher?
Yeah, she's a doctor. She's an academic doctor.
Right.
And she like, while vice president is still teaching.
Yes.
Like very much like I'm not, like I'm gonna be a teacher.
Right. Which is in of itself like a little strange, a little eccentric, a little Uranian, different, different to be a first lady for sure. Still working. Saturn. Yeah.
And I think Saturn, maybe Saturn in Gemini is the persistence of communication that is needed, like the persistence of communication to work to overcome the stutter and to be able to speak publicly, right? Like it's a pretty big feat to be able to not only overcome a stutter, but then to like run for public office in general.
Oh my gosh, right. Yeah, be on so many video cameras and be asking questions from interviewers and all these speeches and having to speak to like foreign diplomats, all of that. Totally. Yeah. And like it's Saturn, so it's like eventually becomes like a skill, like an authority that we sort of have because we're so good at it. We have to work kind of extra hard at it.
Yeah, it also makes me think of the way that I think that he speaks sometimes, because Joe will say things, and if you listen to him and are in conversation, you know exactly what he means. But sometimes if you just listen to like snippets of it, or if you listen to like very small bits of it, you're like, what are you saying? And I think that I feel like that's a Gemini trait. And I say that because I'm a Gemini sun. So like I'm not like dogging on Geminis. Like, because sometimes even when I speak, I feel like if you're talking to me, people know what I'm saying, and I like say things in different ways. But like, I feel that you know, I don't know. I feel that like there's a Gemini quality of like, you know what the person means, even if it isn't exactly what it is that you're saying.
Right. Yeah. Geminis can get sort of wordy or a little scattered, but that's also like using all the different varieties of words to describe what you're describing. So trying to like just throw a big net at it and then get the concept in there. So yeah, it makes sense. And two, I'm just looking too, you definitely are onto something with that sibling thing. I have to look at that because Uranus also rules his third house too. So it's got to be siblings. It's got to be, and I don't know.
He was raised in a Catholic family, so I mean, I feel like I can Google it, but I feel like he has to, right? Like,
yes. Yeah, good God, yeah, right.
And I think he's probably, I think maybe only this. I'm again, don't quote me on this, but maybe one of the very few Catholic presidents that we have. I mean, I know when JFK was elected, he was the first Catholic president, and that was a very big deal. And I think now Joe being elected is obviously it's not as big of a deal, but it's still kind of a, it's still kind of a big deal.
Yeah, right. Which also fills in the Sagittarius rising, right? Like the belief system being part of his identity. He is Catholic. That's a moniker for, you know, who he is.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah,
Definitely. I don't know if you've seen this, but like, they're like people will use, because you know you can do those like that dubbing now where you can like have people say things that like that is in their voice, but it's like AI automatic, or do you know what I'm talking about?
I think so, yeah.
And so I've seen these memes or these TikToks or Instagram reels where people will like make up like a whole spiel about Joe Biden, like talking about how much he loves Nicki Minaj, and or like about how much he like they call him, I think they call him Dank, like when he is like on his, when he's on his like power horse, they call him Dank Brandon. That's like that. I think that's like Twitter's like alter ego of Joe Biden. And I feel like that's very Scorpio. Like it's very, it's very like, oh, like my alter ego is this like that I'm like living for the riches, whatever. And I don't know. Like I think it's like, it's so funny to me that like his alter ego is like in of itself a funny meme that people have like repurposed.
Oh my God, right. Right, which even more goes along too with like the Uranus, like sort of like connected to technology, connected to social media. Like there's something there, like we're partnering with him through social media in some sort of sense. Yeah,
absolutely. The only thing I'm noticing, and I mean, I got the birth time like when I Googled it, and maybe it's off by a couple minutes, but maybe it's not. But according to this, it says the south node is Pisces and the north node is Virgo. But I've seen other people show that his north node is at 29 Leo. So I don't know if that's the difference between the mean node or the true node. This is the true node, not the mean. So I don't know I don't know. That's debatable. But according to this chart, the south node Pisces, north node Virgo.
I mean, that totally tracks with me. I mean, he's been sort of in service his whole life. Like that's so much about the, Virgo Pisces axis is about serving others, being the public servant, doing all that. So that definitely makes sense to me. And I mean, it's talks about all this 12th house too, but like sort of dealing with like loss or, being in hospitals often or being sort of like removed from the public eye at certain points, like very, Pisces South Node, thing that he's doing.
Hmm.
Mm-hmm.
I'm also thinking if the in the Virgo Pisces axis, it's squaring his ascendant and descendant.
Uh-huh.
And so there's just like such a big role for him around his public reputation or his and that also being with him, like with his rising of like how people perceive him or how he views the world compared to his relationships it's just like it's all like very interwoven.
Mm-hmm. So interwoven. Yeah. Right.
I also think of South Node Pisces as being like very understanding the pie in the sky of like I understand how to live like a spiritual life, and I feel like the Virgo North Node feels very much to me like how do I bring that into a practical sense? How do I bring that into something that is materialized and something that feels very sustainable and very very day to day? And I feel that feels like it tracks for me with President Biden, because when the way that he talks about like he loves the work,
yeah,
like there's no way that he doesn't love the work,
right. I've definitely read stories about how like he'll be literally like the last one to go to sleep out of his whole like cabinet, or like they'll be working on a project and he'll still be emailing like late at night. I did read that because I remember too, like Jill had to put like a kibosh, like a stop, that Saturn in the 7th house, like no more emailing Joe because he's going to bed at 9 o'clock. You cannot do this anymore. Like he was like a workhorse, like known to be that way. Yeah.
And he'll be like, I'll respond.
Right, exactly. Like, yeah, right. Well, and that too is a little bit part of that Pisces South Node. Like a Pisces South Node might maybe have issues in the past with boundaries and letting everybody just do whatever they want and just being sort of used up and dried out. And so more of self-care, more of like, a little bit more structure. Yeah.
The only other thing that's coming up for me too is that I know that when he was a Delaware senator, he would take the Amtrak to and from work, and he was like one of the not the only, but he was one of very few people that ever did that, right? It was like very much like I'm gonna talk to the people on, I'm gonna talk to the people on the train, or they can approach me, and it was kind of like that mentality, like I'm of the people. And I feel that that's really connected to Aquarius ruling his 3rd house. Like I'm going to like, and I think 3rd house is community. It's like neighbors and stuff like that. And it's like I think that he wanted to travel locally to make himself feel like he was approachable and not just like this like upper echelon politician.
So good. I love that. Yeah. That totally makes sense. Wanting to be friendly, wanting to like make that connection, that intellectual, connection.
Absolutely. Yeah. Is there anything else that you're noticing about the chart that you want to speak to?
Maybe that, that Pluto in Leo, the Pluto in Leo generation, super interesting because it really doesn't have too much contact in the chart. It does sextile Saturn, which is nice. Wide by the moon, but it just seems like it's a little bit on its own. Like he doesn't really have too much other Leo in the chart. So, and his sun is just, it's in a private sign in a private house. And, but he still does have like, it's just an interesting placement. It feels like it's like, underneath the surface, there's a lot of maybe ego or a lot of power in the ego or something like that. I don't know. What do you think?
The only thing I'm connecting it with, and I do think it's an orb, is I think Pluto is trining his ascendant.
Oh, yes.
And I think that when I think of Pluto and Leo, because I think of it from a like kind of a baby boomer perspective,
Yeah.
and I feel like it's like when they were kind of brought up in the generation that felt like they could have like it's like the world was their oyster, like this sort of like this is like they were living the American dream, or their perception of the American dream. Like we're like it's post World War II, even though this was, I mean 1942 was during World War II, but like like growing up after World War II, where the economy felt like like everything was expanding, and I feel like baby boomers were kind of brought up and being like they can be the stars of the show because they can do whatever they want in a capacity that I think their generation before them didn't feel like they could. Like they're really getting they're getting the example of like trying to be that. And I mean, in some degree that happens with every generation, right? Like a generation after generation, like you want opportunities for your kids that you didn't have and all that other stuff. But I specifically think with Pluto and Leos, it's like the world is whatever pleasure mechanism I want to employ.
Yeah, right.
And I mean, that's just like, I think Pluto and Leo generation, because I think about it too, of like, I mean, obviously this is like, quote, not all baby boomers, but I think that even in their retirement or their retirement age or whatever, you have a group of baby boomers who are pretty consistent about never wanting to not work. And you have another generation of that are like retired, and they're just like, we're getting wasted every day.
Yeah, the play. Yes,
the play. And I really think that comes back to like how I'm trying to understand Pluto and Leo, of like there's a generation of like, we're not only going to perform the fact that we like we're going to be the big dogs, but we're going to also party hard.
Yes, right. Put on, like, have the idea of the theater and then also be the star of it as well. There's like,
yes,
yeah, the whole show.
Totally. Yeah, and I think about this when, I don't know if you saw this, but he recently was in Ireland.
Yes.
And I mean, I don't know, like I didn't pay too much attention, but my understanding of the news was that like people really loved him when he was over there. Like it was like he was the star of the show. And like he walked out to some, I forget the name of the song, but it's some very common like song that people associate with Ireland. And it was just this it was kind of like more party vibes. And like he was like walking out on stage, and like it felt like if you wouldn't know better, you could think that he was walking out on stage in the United States. Like, because like they were waving US flags, and like obviously they were wearing Irish flags too, but like they like loved him. And one of my other friends was just like, what if what if this is his victory lap? Like what if this is just like, Joe, like just like enjoy your retirement in Ireland?
That's great. Yeah, I mean, we love Pluto and Leo loves an audience, of course, like the adoration, that he receives. Yes, heck yes. That's so funny. That's great. That's
and
great.
he like went to his like, I don't know the correct. It's like he went to a home that was like connected to his ancestors. And like he kind of had like a very, apparently there was an article written about how he had a kind of a very, emotional moment, or he had a very sentimental moment, if you will, around like kind of around that, even though obviously he didn't really talk about it, it was kind of talked about that he had it, which again, I think is very Scorpio.
Yes.
And yeah, I don't know. For some reason, I think that just felt necessary to mention.
Yeah, well, Jupiter and Cancer, like again, like my faraway family, like really this sentimentality of, family across the world, like the universal identity connected to that. Yeah. Yeah, what a sweet moment. Interesting.
The one thing that I can't believe that I missed in this? is that if he in fact has the South Node Pisces, North Node Virgo, then the moon is sextiling and trining the nodes.
Oh, yeah, right, to the degree. Yeah.
So there's definitely something very important about his sense of, security and powering through, and sense of doing that through the sense of, joyfulness and playfulness, and like kind of treating everyday life like he can, that like it's in the sign of self-expression.
Yeah. Self-expression, security, pleasure. Yeah.
Sorry, in the house, not the sign. I
Yeah. Still though. Yeah. Right. With Taurus there too. Yeah. It's like kind of it's definitely very like weighty, that moon.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Is there anything else that you were thinking about with like a Pluto Leo?
I'm still trying to figure that out for the generation, because Pluto and Leo typically, I mean, I think of Pluto as like in our charts, it's a little bit of like what we're sort of afraid of. So that generation, that might be a little bit of where the whole conversation is against millennials, and millennials being entitled, like the fear of somebody feeling like they're the star, like not liking that, or seeing sort of like the dark side of that. That generation might be worried about it because of Pluto. So, or just understanding the darker side of that, I think.
Yeah. I mean, I definitely, that's like a really important thing, because Pluto is also like our fear-based, or what we kind of have to process throughout our lives as well. And it does feel like Pluto and Leo people have to really understand what it means to, want to stand in their power, but at the same time, what comes up for them when they have that ability, and when they can. And if they are doing it, are they doing it at the expense of someone else?
Right, exactly. Right. Because Pluto and Leo definitely feels like it has like the ability to be really powerful, like leaders, because Leo is sort of that leader, that leading from the heart, like a person who's just doing exactly what their heart tells them, and unafraid, courageous in that way. Like that's fantastic. But it's getting to that point. Like it requires some like deep transformational processes to kind of get to that top.
Absolutely.
Yeah, and I was like, that Pluto and Leo is so interesting because, I don't think that it happens very often, but he may have a Pluto opposition at some point, since Pluto just got into Aquarius. So I don't think, I think I have to check on that. It's going to be like really far down the line, but a Pluto opposition doesn't usually happen. We usually don't make it far. So
no, definitely not. Yeah, sorry. I was just looking at Obama's chart, because I know he has Leo placements. So I was just seeing what the overlap there was. If there was overlap on his Pluto. It doesn't look like it. Awesome.
That's, I'm just looking at the ephemeris. He in February of 2028.
Which would be when he would leave office if he got reelected.
Right, would be the start of his Pluto opposition. Yeah.
I mean, that tracks.
Yes. Yeah.
Yeah. And it's funny, it's interesting too, because like, I don't think our generation who knows how long we're going to live, but like, based on what we know now, I don't think that we, like Pluto and Scorpio generation, is going to experience a Pluto opposition.
Right. Well, right, because Pluto is super slowing down. Like this area of the chart, I think it's like Sagittarius, Scorpio, Sagittarius, Capricorn, I think is like the slowest versions of Pluto, and then the other sign is the fastest.
Yeah, so I think actually it's
the other way around.
Taurus is the slowest moving through the sign.
That's right.
And Scorpio is the quickest because I think like Pluto moved through Scorpio in like, it was like 10 and a half years.
So quick. Yes.
But then it
Yeah.
takes, I don't want to say because I actually don't remember, but it takes a very long time for Pluto to move through Taurus.
I think it's 33. That's what I've talked about before with somebody. Yeah.
And so it's slowing down because I think Pluto in Aquarius is like, it's like what, 20 years?
Yes. I think, yeah, 20 or 21. Yeah.
So yeah, that'll be interesting to see how that unfolds.
All the baby boomers are going to have a Pluto opposition. Yeah.
Yeah. Should we move on to the next chart?
Let's do it.
So now we have Joe Biden's natal chart on top of the re-election chart, just to see if there's just to kind of, see if there's anything popping out. Again, so this is from the orientation of the re-election, or the re-election announcement, which is Aries rising, and Joe's chart is on the outside, and that puts, again, like the sun north node is, very close to his moon.
Right. It's just, yeah, it is really like drumming up something about the past and how he feels secure. Yeah. I mean, running for president again probably feels good to him.
Yeah, I'm also thinking that Mars is making an opposition to Mercury retrograde right now. His Mars is making an opposition to current Mercury retrograde. And
right.
And he's getting Mars trine Mars right now.
Yes, which is nice, but it'll be interesting once that, our current Mars in Pisces moves along and the Mercury goes back again for another couple of hits of that opposition to Mars.
Yeah, I do wonder what what Mercury retrograde will bring with the announcement, and making the opposition again, because making the opposition to his Mars again of something around, maybe having to say something more about his intentions or his announcement or something like that. I just wonder how he'll clarify his communication around it.
Yeah, he might have to, maybe it's him having to show more strength, show more combativeness. Maybe it is getting into fights, with people through communication somehow, some information exchange that's sort of tough, where he's got to bring up the Mars gloves. Yeah, I'm curious. We'll have to watch that one the next couple of weeks.
Yeah. Are you noticing anything else here that seems interesting? With the announcement?
Right, with the announcement. Yeah. Let's see. We talked about the moon, which is great. Yeah.
I am noticing that Neptune is making a trine right now to his Scorpio stellium. Neptune in Pisces is making a trine to the Sun, Mercury, Venus stellium in Scorpio.
Yeah.
And I don't know, a trine to Neptune can really feel like you feel like you're really wanting to live out the personification of your dream, the personification of what it is that you've always dreamed of being. And that really being associated with his ego or his how he just generally operates.
Yeah, and Neptune goes up right to his sun, the 27th degree, right around July, and stations retrograde right at that sun point. So yeah, the summer is maybe going to be good for him.
I say that again. I didn't hear you.
The Neptune is going to go up to 27 degrees, so it'll be exactly trining his sun and then go retrograde a degree. So it'll be on his sun for a while, which is great. Yeah, achieving the dream a little bit, or a more embodiment of the dream.
Yeah. What do you think of when you think of Neptune trines?
Yeah, I think that there's maybe more of an acceptance of what you have to sacrifice. And then also through that, then a more you get closer to the dream. You're like, I really want this ideal situation, and I'm also willing to, drop my expectations around this or that, and then it does get you like closer somehow. Yeah. What about you?
Yeah, I really like what you just had to say of like, it's like more of like a free flowing, I'm willing to kind of like know what I need to sacrifice, or know what I need to go through. And I think that the Neptune trine can also kind of feel like this sense of like, again, this kind of sense of like, he feels he can do it no matter what. Like there's sort of like, I think Neptune can be very like, go on the journey, like be like, ride the wave, if you will. Whether or not the wave is, helpful. Like it's like you're on the wave, so you're riding it no matter what. And I think the trine definitely feels like it's easier to kind of navigate the wave, regardless of the fact that you still might be on a wave and it could be a bit bumpy.
Yeah, that's good. Right. The like lows of the wave you're like, well, there's the top too, so I'll get there. Like, yeah. Acknowledging that there are bumps, but being less bothered by them. Yeah.
Yep.
That's good.
I also think I'm noticing that because he has that 0 degrees South Node Pisces, is that Saturn actually will station retrograde and move all the way back to 0 degree Pisces before it stations direct. I think it's later this. I don't know when Saturn stations direct, but I did actually just look at this recently, and Saturn does station direct at 0 degrees Pisces. So I am curious of how and what that will bring for him, of like needing to, or like having a better understanding of like letting go of some sort of structure or setup that wasn't, that just like it hasn't been helpful for him.
Amazing. Yeah. Like, right. Some like, yeah, like karmic relief, or like work done to work off that karma, to like, right. To put the effort in. Yeah, that's good. It goes retrograde in November at 0, so it'll be right around that time.
Right around the time where he's gonna have to start campaigning.
Yes.
Well, I don't know. I mean, I guess if no Democrat runs against him, which presumably they aren't, then he really doesn't have to do anything until the convention. So it would be interesting to see what pops up there in November. Or that we'll ever even know what that means, because obviously he's not like, telling all about his daily life.
Right, telling us about his past lives. Yeah.
I'm going to flip it just to see if we see any orientation different here. So this is his chart in reference to the announcement. So we have Joe Biden's chart on the inner circle, and then the announcement chart on the outer circle.
Right. So, I mean, okay, the big one, which I'm like, I am like a little nervous about. I've been seeing it, counting down the days. There's a big old Jupiter square Pluto coming up, and Mars is also going to be right at the same degrees, opposing that Pluto, squaring that Jupiter, and it's going to be right on his moon. It'll all be at 0 degrees.
So like Pluto is going to be at what, 0 degrees Aquarius, and
Jupiter will get to 0 degrees Taurus, and Mars will get 0 degrees Leo. Yeah.
And Mars will be at 0 degrees Leo. Is that what you said?
Yeah.
Dang.
Yeah, May 21st. So
Oh, how have we not like also thanks for bringing that up. Like Pluto is currently squaring his moon.
oh duh. Yeah, right. First of all, whoa. Okay.
How did we miss that?
Ooh. Not good to hear.
But yeah, like and having that T square of a 0 degree, like Leo Mars opposite Pluto squaring his moon. You're right. That can be definitely some pretty tension. And it's the eighth house. It'll be the eighth house, the second house, and the fifth, which to me speaks more to about issues to deal with finances.
Yes.
Or shared issues. And I'm thinking about Cancer in the eighth house of like something again happening with his family. Like I guess I know it's happening at 1 degree Leo, but it's still Cancer ruled. Or like the eighth house is ruled by Cancer, excuse me.
And it's moon. It's his moon, which is family.
Yeah.
Right.
And that'll probably be closer. When does that happen?
May 21st.
And the North Node will then again be closer to his, like we'll be moving down in degrees because the North Node and
reverses.
They move in reverse order than everything else. Will be closer to his moon as well. So I do wonder if there's something that will happen in next month in that time frame that could come out around something to do with finances or personal, like how he shares his resources.
Right. Finances and Pluto and the moon in Taurus. Yeah. It's definitely going to have to do something with the past for sure. Cause it's his moon, the one planet of his that's being affected. So, I wonder too, like the moon is so sort of like personal and inner, like our inner emotions and feelings. And maybe, Pluto squaring that is like it could be we see like a really like sort of bad reaction. Like the moon sometimes is how we react to things, and Pluto and Mars like throwing a lot of tension at that. Like we see a really bad reaction come to the surface, and him having to address it.
Or like like Mars and Leo of like how how someone expresses themselves or is just very bold about something.
Yeah, shakes him up a little bit. Right. And then just a teeny bit worried about like, sometimes the moon has to do with like our like health a little bit, like a tiny bit, like digestive issues or our sustenance or, like how we are nurturing or, getting nutrition and all that. So a little difficulty there.
And Taurus rules his sixth too, even even if he has it in his fifth. And I do question a little bit whether or not there will be some potential health issues for him after Mercury comes back over Uranus.
Yeah, right. Which will probably be, let's see, Mercury.
It's like the first week of June.
Oh, right. So it'll be that Mercury passing over Uranus in his sixth, and then all that action against his moon.
Right. Right. And also, I mean, Uranus is approaching an opposition to his stellium, right? Like it's by June, it's going to be opposing his Mercury. And there could be some chaos around how he's communicating or there's just a lot of speculation around why he's communicating a certain way, or I don't know. I think of Uranus Mercury opposition of just like being very like a really a deeper understanding of what it means when you're saying something.
Yeah, like the wider implications, or maybe he needs to learn how to say things in a new way somehow. because of the like any type of rut he's been in and the way he communicates.
Mm.
Right. Yeah, Uranus, you're so right. It's catching up to that Mercury, and then next year, 2024, it does go up to his moon and then back to, or sorry, his sun, and then it actually retrogrades right at 27 degrees. So
Ooh, sun opposite Uranus. I think it's like a very call for him to be a little bit out of the shadows, I think, or
whoa,
like a
yeah.
really call to action of like needing to be in the, I don't know, I like really like be in the body more.
Ah, right. That's good, right? Because it's Uranus and Taurus.
Yeah, and a more like like more, I don't know, just like a more grounded approach to like how he's trying to live his daily life. And
Mm-hmm.
maybe Uranus shaking up how he feels like he can live his daily life. The
Mm.
president's schedule is always like super busy. And I just wonder with Uranus there, it being just like there's just like him having to really get real about like what kind of daily life he can actually have as an older, like a very, he's in his 80s. Like
Mhm. Yes, there are definitely going to be changes. I mean, you could only assume only changes in his healthcare routine and everything.
yeah. I mean, I'm very interested. I want to look up more about Sun Uranus oppositions.
Right. Right. I mean, we would think like it's awakening the ego in a different way, or at least showing like mirroring to the ego where you're in too much of a rut, where you're too stuck.
And Scorpio can definitely is
Stuck.
comfortable with routine or habit, I should say.
Yes.
Um,
Yes.
awesome. Shall we move on to the other chart?
Let's do it.
So this is Joe Biden's chart on the inside, and then it's the U.S. Sibly chart on the outside, which is the USA chart. And in its relation, and I think that that is good to know in relationship to obviously him running for re-election, and just to get kind of that better idea.
Yeah, what he means for the United States. Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. Immediately they're both like the US and Joe Biden are both Sag risings. And the US and Joe Biden has Jupiter and Cancer. So they're both of their chart rulers are Jupiter and Cancer as Sag risings, which, Jupiter in the eighth again, I think is a really interesting perspective of like how he might very well be able to mirror the sort of intimacy and like resource of caring that the United States is comfortable with understanding.
Oh my gosh, so good. The resource of caring. I love that. Yes. Yeah.
That's like an immediate thing. I mean, it's interesting because Uranus, I think you pointed this out before we got on the call, that Uranus and Saturn are on the US's Uranus. And I think that also can speak to this sort of, like authenticity and communication and but also like, sort of this, I think, when I think of Uranus in Gemini too, it can almost sometimes be this like rivalry of like this kind of seatedness of rivalry. And I don't know, maybe this is my own speculation, but like the US is like a two-party system and we only have a two-party system, and it just being such a like us versus them mentality. And just how, I don't know, like how that, like to me, I think that kind of speaks to some of the divisiveness of how the United States' culture has metastasized or has come to light.
Oh my God. Yeah. I mean, yeah, it's Mars in Gemini too. So do two different ways to fight. Yes.
Yep.
Yeah. I can easily see that. I didn't really think about the the like against each other, but you're so right. I mean, I was thinking like Uranus and Gemini might be, for as old as Biden is, he's still able to, sort of like have conversations with younger people. He's still like curious about, what the conversation even is. Like he, isn't stuck in his own ways. Like Uranus and Gemini is like just so sort of open to me, like really, really open. So, like a new way to make patterns or a new way to talk or a new way to think about things, like changing our word around gender, our words around gender, like that. Uranus and Gemini feels right. Like there's some good to it, but it's very interesting, the duality too. Yeah.
The other thing I'm noticing is the US and Job have Saturn in air signs. And it's kind of it's a wideish orbit, 6 degrees. So I don't know if it's necessarily trine, but there's definitely something there about structure and being relationship oriented and also communication and how that kind of can play off each other. And, yeah.
Right. Like the sort of importance of communication, like how we're talking to one another, like maybe too, it's like the written rules that we have, like Saturn and air signs, and the importance of like using the right words, how much weight they carry, that type of thing.
Yeah. I also think of Saturn and Libra, because Saturn and Libra is, exalted. And you can correct me if I'm wrong. I believe Saturn is exalted in Libra. And I think it's just how the US really likes to be relationship oriented. And like they're always like being like, oh, we're the peacemakers of the world, like we're like, don't worry, like the US, like imperialism to the rescue.
Yes. And how
and in the 10th house of like of career, reputation, of like public life, of like we're the authority and we'll be the peacemakers, don't you worry.
Yes, as long as you have a relationship with us, then you're okay. Yeah, right, exactly.
Right.
Yeah.
Right.
That, and then maybe too like the importance or like weight on marriage too, like being like committed with another person. Saturn in Libra feels very much like marriage, like a marriage contract that you're sort of, have to do hard work with. Oh, but in opposition with Chiron, which is also interesting.
Yeah, it is. I guess I didn't really put the two together that the US is also approaching its whatever number of Chiron return.
the 7 or something. Yeah, right.
Yeah, because it's every 50-ish years. So however many that is. But yeah, that is very interesting. And I'm also noticing that the Joe Biden's Pluto is on USA's North Node. And I don't know, Pluto North Node is like power. Oh
my God.
It's like how much power is power.
Right.
And again, like in the 8th, feeling very much like using, again, like other people's resources and to kind of elevate himself. And like I think that Pluto North nodes can feel like how he's really trying to stand in his power.
Yes. Well, right. And like our dollar being what everybody else uses too, or the majority of countries, like they, there's the power of our money, how we're sharing to you, like that sort of, in bed situation that we have going on with a lot of other countries, and him sort of maybe using that to his advantage. Our resources, sending our resources over to Ukraine, like, sending our resources over to whatever country, Iraq, or, there's all kinds.
Absolutely. I'm just trying to see what else I'm seeing here. I mean, we have his Mercury, or sorry, the US's Mercury is on his Jupiter.
Yeah, he's got a lot of, I don't know if I quite realized, he's got a lot of alignments with with the United States chart.
Yeah. And just kind of, yeah, that it's like, I feel like a Mercury Jupiter conjunction is like how I'm using the small details to also build a bigger image and message and sense of larger ideas. It's like the combination of the big and small to like make plans.
So good. Right. Wow. Right, like the United States is like trading power, like our little, like little ports that go back and forth, like here and there, our Mercury, like our transportation and just from point A to point B, and then him, I mean, he I think he did say in his speech, like building more bridges, building more roads, like expanding this, sort of commerce situation that the United States has.
Yeah, he's very commerce driven. Yeah, are you seeing anything else, or is there anything else that's popping up to you?
Yeah, I mean, the United States Neptune making a sextile to his Mercury. So, maybe him being able to sort of speak on the dream. I mean, I know that.
And on the MC, like the Neptune being on
his MC too.
On his MC.
Right.
Yeah, the Mercury sextile Neptune is really interesting because also I think we talked about in the last in our last video that Trump has Mercury square Neptune.
Right. And he has, with the United States relationship with the United States, it just feels like he can sort of speak or put words to, our dreams or our hopes. Yeah, and then Neptune right on that, his MC is very interesting. I mean, that tracks too, like it, he might be a little diluted for the United States. His own authority here is sometimes really strong and sometimes not.
Yeah. Well, I think that we've really dug into it. I think we really got into the nitty gritty. I want to get, is there any last thing that you want to bring up before we wrap up?
No, I don't think so. I mean, I'm happy we did look at this as, like towards the end, we got into, it feels like there is something here for this guy to be our president. I mean, he already has been, so maybe that's what this just means, is he's sort of aligned with some of our desires and our, evolutionary movement forward as a country. But yeah, very interesting.
It is very interesting. I think that, like the US Sibly Chart has been talked a lot about, and I'm not the only astrologer that has said this, that like, having so much of an 8th house emphasis really comes from the USA being born on, the backs of slavery and other people's labor and resources. And, the Pluto opposition or the Pluto return that the USA has, gone through and will kind of experience again up until the end of 2024 is really kind of a coming to fruition moment of like really having to get real about what does it mean that, 250 years later, that there are certain economic inequities that are still present in our economy because it was based on structural, racism, and who has the finances because of all of that. So I just think it's important to name that and to, kind of talk about that from that perspective.
Amazing. Yeah, right. I mean, we have to we have to face it. It's the Pluto return. Like it is our moment to like bring it to the surface and like incorporate it and make it real again. Like I totally agree with you. Yeah.
And my hope is, and I don't know, my hope is, it's a hope, is that, I don't know, that whoever is president, or, Joe being president or whatever, can offer leadership in that perspective to, really bring this to light and really have this be an opportunity for us to think about how we want to restructure or acknowledge the past, so that we don't have to keep reliving it in our day-to-day lives.
Yes. Amazing. Yes. Right. And that's the thing. It's like, that's what Pluto does. Is it like it's something that it's under the surface, and it's pain that's under the surface, and it seeps into everything. Like, so acknowledging it and healing it, it's at least at some level, or starting the process, like that's what we need to do for sure. So hopefully, I agree with you. Crossing fingers, crossing toes.
Absolutely. And I think it'll be interesting too when the nodes move into Libra and Aries as well, for not only Joe Biden, because it'll be out of his sun, his luminary spots. And, from a USA perspective, I guess it'll be the South Node will be moving over to Saturn, which will be really, really interesting to see how maybe that is a dissolvement of how we think we're the relationship makers when we're not.
Right. Yeah. Like a cold, hard look at this. Yes, exactly.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. Well, when I was looking at the clock, I was like, oh my gosh, we've been so long.
Whoops.
That's what happens when you get two air signs talking.
Yeah, right. Forget about
it. We'll talk forever.
Yes, exactly. Well, we have so much to say, and it's fun to like explore it all out. This is great. Hopefully it gets people thinking, even if they're not in alignment with what we're thinking. At least there's some good points that we can ponder together. Yeah.
Absolutely. And I'm so much enjoying looking at charts with you together. So I'm really grateful and thankful that you're up for having a conversation with me.
Oh my gosh. Same.
Awesome. Well, do you want to outro again and we can wrap this up?
Sure. Yes. I am. One more time. I'm Kristina Martin. I am a professional astrologer, a teacher, a tutor, a reader, whatever you want. So I'm at klmastrology.com or KLM Astrology on Instagram. Yeah.
Awesome. Thanks, Kristina. And again, I am Blake Kelly. My pronouns are they and he. I can't believe I'm only saying this now, which is fine. I am also a professional consulting astrologer, and if you want to learn a little bit about my journey and how it is I came to be in astrology, I have a website, whatisblakedoing.com, or you can find me on Instagram at cosmic.empowerment. And yeah, I'm open to different types of bookings or anything that people are curious astrology wise. So without that, this has been the second episode of Blake's Astrology Corner, as I'm calling it for the time being, because I like it. And we'll see how it evolves. So I'll put all of the info in the bio as well. So if you guys are like, where's all this info? I'll put it in the show notes. And I will see you all next time. Thanks.
Bye-bye.